Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel where we talk about Hungarian true crime stories, and my name is Tímea. And today's case is going to be an episode of my communist crime series. Besides, it's also a mini series by itself where I'm going to talk about the last convict to be executed in Hungary. Recently, I have found a few very interesting cases that all involve the last murderers to get the death penalty. Today's case is going to involve domestic violence, abuse, and the murder of children. So that is your trigger warning. Besides, if you are not new to my channel, you can see that my background has changed and my quality. I bought some light boxes, a microphone, which I'm hoping is working, and I hope that my production quality is going to be a little bit better this time. Also, stay tuned for the Hungarian word of the day at the end of the video. Let's start with the end of the story. The police was alerted and came to the scene of a terrible murder underneath a 10-story high building. 3 children were lying on the ground, lifeless, after seemingly having fallen from the roof of the building. And their father was standing right beside them, entirely emotionless. The police didn't have to investigate too much to figure out that it was the father who was responsible for the death of his 3 children. It was a 30-year-old mechanic, a man called Kohányi Ferenc, who decided to kill his children to take revenge on his ex-wife. There were multiple witnesses because all of the surrounding buildings were higher than the building that the children fell off from. So many people could see what was going on the roof. These witnesses claimed to have seen Ferenc bring up these 3 children to the roof, which, by the way, was very easily and readily accessible. There were no obstacles, no fence, no railing, and it was very easy to jump off or fall off from this roof. And it still is, nothing has changed. The witnesses saw Ferenc seating his children on the 30-centimeter tall ledge on the edge of the roof, facing him, and then just pushing the children into the deep. Upon the arrival of the police, Ferenc admitted to everything, and the police took him into custody and started interrogating him, where he confessed to everything. So how and why did this murder take place? 11 years earlier, Ferenc met his soon-to-be wife, a woman called Anna, and they got married in 1970. They had 4 children together, and at the time of the crime, they had a 3-year-old girl, Anna, a 7-year-old boy, István, an 8-year-old boy, Attila, and a 10-year-old boy, Ferenc Jr. In 1980, so less than a year before the crime took place, they moved into this apartment that they got from the government in this 10-story high building in Miskolc. And unfortunately, Ferenc was not a good husband at all. He was abusive, toxic, neglectful, and controlling. In fact, Anna's and Ferenc's marriage has gone so bad, it perished in the 10 years of them being together, that shouting, yelling, arguments, and fights were not a rare occurrence in their household at all. And the neighbors were aware of this, and they didn't do anything. Nobody ever called the police on them. Nobody tried to help them. Which you can blame them all if you want, but 40 years ago in communist Hungary, it's not as if something could have been done. The police was not going to care. Everybody was focused on their own problems and on their own survival. So every time the neighbors heard the shouting at night, they just pulled the pillows over their head and tried to act like nothing was going on. There is not much to know about Ferenc's early childhood and background, but we know quite a bit about Anna. She was born and raised in a farm very isolated from society. She had an abusive alcoholic father who the entire family was subjected to. Her mother was handicapped and she only acted as a baby machine for the father. She had no other role other than raising the children. Anna was semi-illiterate because normally the 8 years of elementary education is compulsory in Hungary, but she only finished the first 4 years out of the 8. And even finishing the first 4 years took her 7 years. She could barely read and barely write, and she had literally no idea that life could be any different. She thought that having an abusive man in the family and being subjected to the will and the anger of this man is what was the life of a woman. She couldn't have known any better. So when she met Ferenc and they apparently fell in love and she married him, she had no idea that she could have had another choice. Ferenc was so controlling to the point that he did not allow Anna to have a job and try to sustain herself. Ferenc did everything that he could to chain Anna to him, subject her to everything what he wanted, make her bear a bunch of kids and exist only for the control of Ferenc. And it really wasn't until 1980, when they moved into this housing estate, that Anna's life somehow opened. She started making friends and meeting new people from the neighborhood. And that was when, in this little park ground area of this housing estate, she met a man called György, who actually lived in the building opposite from Anna's and Ferenc's building. György was a very gentle and kind man, which was the opposite of Ferenc. So Anna quickly fell in love with him. And because György was a widow himself, because his wife committed suicide by jumping off the roof a little bit earlier, leaving 5 children behind, György really needed the helping hand of a woman. So Anna and György started an affair, and this soon came to light. Anna left Ferenc and she moved in with György and his 5 children, who were now her stepchildren, just across from where Anna's family lived. And Anna left her own 4 children in the hands of Ferenc. Unfortunately, even though György seemed to be a good partner, he had his run-ins with the law as well. And very soon after Anna moved in with him, he was going to start a 2-year prison sentence, leaving Anna alone in the flat with the 5 stepchildren, completely unprotected from the anger of Ferenc. You may be asking yourself now, why did Anna allow her 4 children to still live with Ferenc, who was abusive, who was threatening to kill them? And that is a great question. I think that is something that you only know if you have been in an abusive and controlling, manipulative relationship yourself. Anna and the children were afraid of Ferenc. He constantly subjected them to all kinds of danger and threatened to kill them if they didn't obey his rule. And Anna really thought that allowing Ferenc to have their children and live with them would put the children into less danger than going against the will of Ferenc. According to Anna, had she taken the 4 children with her, Ferenc would have come after her, kill all of them, or kidnap the children, or do something terrible to them. So she left them in his care. And not to mention that Anna didn't have a job, she didn't have money of her own, and she did not have the means of taking care of 4 of her own children and 5 of her stepchildren. On multiple occasions, Ferenc threatened Anna that if she doesn't come back to him, he would kill her, he would kill her children, but nobody took him seriously. Nobody really thought that he would be able to do that. Unfortunately, it didn't take very long for the anger and the resentment of Ferenc towards his ex-wife to grow to such an extent that he would actually commit the murders that he planned on. It was on that fatal day in July that Ferenc decided that that was going to be the day when he kills his entire family. And his plan was to coax Anna from her apartment over to their family home and strangle her to death. After which he was going to coax his 4 children to the roof of the building and throw them off one by one. He actually planned on killing himself in the end, but he soon decided that he was just too young and too important to die. Now, Ferenc wasn't an intelligent person at all, and he took his oldest son, the 10-year-old Ferenc Jr., for a stupid. And he told his son the entire plan, and he instructed Ferenc Jr. to go over to his mom's apartment, tell her to come over so they could all die together. Now, obviously, Ferenc Jr. wasn't gonna do that. He did not go to tell his mom to come home so they could all die together. He didn't tell this to anybody. He instead decided to escape to a nearby town, Miskolc-Tapolca, where he went into hiding. He said that he didn't tell authorities or anyone what his father was planning on doing because he just could not believe that it was really going to happen. His father threatened them all the time, and there was no sign that this time he was going to stick to his word. So this little boy heard about the murder of his siblings only later from a person who lived in Miskolc-Tapolca, and just before authorities found him. So when Ferenc, the father, realized that his oldest son and his wife aren't coming back to be murdered, he decided that he was still going to go on with the murder of the other children. And at around 8 p.m. that night, he coaxed them up to the roof, saying that they were going to watch the sunset. And these children completely believed him. They were excited to see the sunset from the roof. So they just took the elevator and went up to the top floor, where the roof was easily accessible. So Ferenc set the 3 children on the ledge of the roof. And on the count of 3, he started throwing them off the roof one by one. And the 8-year-old Attila almost got away. But his father was unfortunately stronger and faster, and he fetched him and threw him off the roof. Then Ferenc just took the elevator to the ground floor and just went on to check if his children had died. By this time, a small crowd has collected around the 3 children lying on the ground, and there was an obvious panic and frenzy. And because from the surrounding buildings there were witnesses who saw what was going on, they called the police. Now, when Ferenc arrived to check on the 3 children, he saw that Attila was technically still alive. His mouth was foaming. So Ferenc told the witnesses that surrounded them with a complete poker face without any emotion on his face to just bring some water for Attila. I don't know what he thought that the water would do, but either way, poor Attila was pronounced dead upon the arrival at the hospital. When the police arrived, it was obvious who did it and how. So they took Ferenc into custody and they interrogated him, and he told them the story that now you already know. And when the police asked him why was this the only way that he could settle his differences with his ex-wife? Why did he have to take it out on the children? Ferenc said that I am their father, so I can do it. Apparently, if you give a single sperm cell to the existence of a person, now you are in your full right to just go about killing them brutally, right? His trial started just within a few days because there was an obvious murderer, an obvious motive, and the obvious evidence, and he was deemed fit to stand trial. He was diagnosed as a psychopath who lacked any emotions, any empathy, any real connection with other people, and he thought that everybody around him existed for one purpose: serving him. That is why his attorney asked the judge to give him a lenient sentence, because Ferenc wholeheartedly believed and said that he was the one to commit the murders, but he was not the one responsible for them, because it was his wife. If his wife hadn't left him, he wouldn't have to kill the children. This asshole still has the audacity to go about blaming the woman whose life he ruined, who he gaslighted, manipulated, hurt, abused, murdered her children, and then say on court that she was responsible because her only purpose in life was to be his wife and bring up the children, and how dare she abandon them. Obviously, the judge took this very seriously and didn't take this trial for a joke, and he got his final sentence in the October of 1981. He was found guilty on all charges, which was the premeditated and extraordinarily brutal murder of 3 minors. He got the death penalty by hanging, which Ferenc appealed because according to him it was too hard of a sentence. But thank God the appeal was rejected, and the Supreme Court approved of the death penalty, and he was hanged on a Friday, on the 5th of February 1982. He was the last man to be executed in the county of Borsod-Abaúj-Zemplén. So there you have it. Here is the story of how domestic violence and abuse can end in the murder of innocent children. If you or anyone you know is the victim of domestic abuse, speak up, let someone know, go to the police of your country and do something about it, because you never know, maybe you are the one to prevent such tragedy from ever happening again. So I decided the Hungarian word of the day to be szörnyeteg. It means monster, because that was this man was. He was a fucking monster without a heart. It's pronounced S, Ö, Eny, and G. So szörnyeteg. Szörnyeteg. So let me know what you thought about this case, and also what you thought about my new setup, the background, the lighting, the audio. I hope everything worked just fine. And don't forget to let me know what you would like to see from me next. I think the next case I would like to cover is either a communist terrorist, a little grandma who was a murderer, or the life and death of Houdini, who was also Hungarian, in case you didn't know. Oh, and I almost forgot. Today's engagement question for the sake of the algorithm should be: what is a very good quality in you that you wish people would recognize more often? In my case, I think it's my perseverance. I am a very hard worker, and once I set my mind to a goal, there is nothing that's going to deter me from that. What is it for you? If you have made it this far into this video, you might as well like it. It's free for you and it helps me out a lot. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you would like to see more of this communist crime series or history series. And thank you very much for watching. Bye!